welcome to No Broken Legs. I am your host, Evan Belfiore. Week 5 of the NFL season is upon us, and a lot of questions still to be answered as to who's good, who's not. It's Halloween season. Are any of these teams going to turn into pumpkins? Jimmy Champ is here to help us figure all this out. Jimmy, how are you on this Saturday morning?
I'm good. I got to start changing my approach now that NFL refs are turning into NBA refs, in which we don't know what's a foul at the end of games.
Well, that just gets us into the Thursday night game that we already saw where Atlanta came back and beat Tampa. Baker keeps being pretty good. That Tampa secondary doesn't seem to be able to stop anybody with all their injuries, and Tampa just cannot run the ball. That was a terrible turnover they had late in that game. I know they got it back, but Todd Bowles, I feel like, got a little tight there late, just running the ball 3 times after they got the ball back on that interception. I feel like they should have taken a shot to get a first down. What were your thoughts on Thursday night?
Yeah, I wouldn't have had a problem with the pass. I mean, easy to say in hindsight, because if they call the face mask and it's offsetting penalties, they'll run it one more time and kick a field goal and probably win the game. So, but they really didn't have any problem getting the ball to Evans and Godwin. So It kind of surprised me they didn't throw once. But the NFC South is going to be wild because it turned into, with the way it ended, it turned into Kirk Cousins played this amazing game and the Falcons won. But it should have been Kirk Cousins threw for 470 yards and a loss. So the NFC South is going to be kind of wild. Those are going to be tough games, I think, to try to dial in on. I really do.
Yeah, Atlanta with 2 big division wins this week and last week over New Orleans really puts them in the driver's seat.
Yes, it does.
Let's just talk about the Cleveland Browns. No segue, because it was another ugly Sunday for the Browns. They lose to the Raiders. Now they have the Washington Armada coming into town. For those unaware, we don't call them the Commanders because that's boring and lame. The Washington Armada, 3.5-point home favorites against the Browns. Over-under sits at 43.5, minus 166 for the minus 166 for Washington, plus 140 for Cleveland. We're at the point now where the Browns have a lot of injuries. They're starting to get some of these guys back, but can they find a way to bounce back and get their season on track, Jimmy?
I don't think so. I think they'll probably slow down the Armada a little bit, but I'm taking Washington here. I think there's too much noise and too much nonsense in Berea. I mean, we're defending a quarterback who threw for under 200 yards on mostly short tosses and saying, no, he's not part of the problem now. Like, that's a big problem to me because that's still a problem.
But Jimmy, if, the center didn't hold the defensive lineman, they would have had a touchdown to Amari Cooper, and everybody's just ignoring the fact that if he doesn't hold that defensive player, it's probably a sack.
Exactly. Exactly.
That's one of those situations where, okay, I get it. You're like, oh man, that penalty erases a big play, but the penalty created the big play.
And we know if he wouldn't have held, he breaks through, then Watson's eyes change and he doesn't still find Amari most likely. So, Cooper had the horrible play on the interception.
Yep.
The offense is a mess. I don't know if they can run the ball because they don't want to try. Other teams with bad offensive lines figure out how to produce a little bit of a run game. Cleveland can't seem to do it. Before the year, I thought the Armada could be good if Jaden Daniels was good, and he seems like he's pretty good. They have fast wide receivers, so they're probably going to line them up in the slot and just run down the field and catch balls.
Those are the things that I don't hear anybody talking about. Minshew had a wide open, I think it was their tight end, dropped one on their first drive. That would have been like a 15, 20-yard gain. And then he had one of his receivers down the seam, and he just flat out missed him. But that would have been a touchdown if Gardner Minshew was a good quarterback. And they almost gave up the big run at the end of the first half, which would have been just a disaster. The defense just got ran on all day. So I'm with you. I like Washington in this game just because the Browns are who I thought they were. Their defense is overrated. I mean, I guess Watson looks fine at times. He certainly wasn't bad on Sunday, but even in the games where he plays well, there's moments you look at and go, what are you doing? And again, it was at the end of the game where on 4th down, he doesn't even get a pass off. He double clutches. He had guys open. I don't know where those routes are supposed to go or what his progressions are, but it seemed like he panicked and couldn't even get a ball off, or Kevin Stefanski's doing his classic, I'm going to get my third and fourth wide receivers open even though my line can't block for 2.5 seconds type of play calling, so that it doesn't matter if your third guy's open if your quarterback's on his back.
Yeah, and the thing is on that play is, we had 2 weeks in a row, there's so much defense of, what the read is, whatever. Like, anything Deshaun Watson does there besides what he does is the right thing to do.
Yeah, I mean, he can just blindly throw that ball up in the air, and it's better than what he did.
Or if he just tucks it and tries to run forward and gets tackled.
Which is odd, because in that Jacksonville game, he panicked and threw it when he could have taken a sack, and in this case, he should have done the opposite, which is just chuck it.
Yep. So it just, once again, I think it goes back to us absolutely questioning his football awareness. He does not seem to have that in him right now. And he is part of the problem. He's maybe not the worst part of the problem, but he's still part of the problem. And I think you'll probably see times in this game where Cleveland sustains a long dink and dunk drive that ends in the field goal, and then Jaden Daniels throws 2 shots, and they've scored a touchdown, and now Cleveland's back on the field, and then they punt, and then Jaden Daniels scores another shot play, and now you're down 14-3. Like, I just, that's how I see this game going.
You just touched on one of the big things that this team's struggling with, and that's they can come out the gate and get a good first drive, and then that second drive seems to get going, and then it stalls out. And then after that, they just don't do anything for like half a dozen drives.
Yep.
And the offense isn't finding any consistency. The defense isn't really having any consistency either. Some bad news over there. They lose Alex Wright. He's, I think, done for the season. It's a blow to the defensive line. I don't know how much of one, because I don't know how good Alex Wright actually is, but what was most alarming was how much I heard players talking about being on the same page.
Yep.
And Kevin Stefanski's been here this is his 5th season. He's been with Deshaun Watson for 3 of these years. They have basically the same team they had last year. Like, why aren't guys on the same page? Like, what are we talking about? Why is it always this, who's on what page? Like, why aren't you guys on the same page knowing what you're supposed to be doing? It's week 5 now.
And, like, we can understand you're going to take a little step back with the amount of injuries the Browns have. And I get that. But you're not the plucky underdog. You have one of the highest paid offenses in the NFL. You have the 2-time coach of the year. Andrew Berry is highly regarded as a great executive. Like, you don't get to tell me that we're not on the same page and me think it's okay.
Yeah. You're really getting to the heart of the matter on offense. They got guys out, but the guys that are supposed to be making up for those types of things aren't doing it, specifically Watson and Cooper. And then you just go to the defensive side of the ball, and I know Wright's out now, but I mean, previously that defense has been mostly healthy, and they don't seem like they are ready for what the other team's going to do. Teams move the ball on them seemingly at will. When they get stopped, it seems like they can get 1 or 2 stops a game, but then the rest of the drives, it seems like it's just dependent on what the offense does. Overall, it seems like the other side is dictating what happens in these games. And for a team that's supposedly this talented with, as you said, a great front office or a well-revered front office, a well-revered coaching staff, just something in here is not right. Either this team isn't as talented as people said, or the front office and the coaching staff isn't as good as people say. And I actually think it's kind of all 3 of them. I think everybody is overrated on this Browns team. And this, like I said, this is the team I was expecting. I wasn't expecting them to be 1-3 after 4 games. I thought they'd be at worst 2-2, looking to win this game in Washington. But Washington looks like a good football team right now. And if the offense can't get their shit together against this Washington defense that's been pretty underwhelming, it's going to be a bad look, because everybody's going to look and say, well, Baker torched this defense. Why can't the Browns?
Yeah, well, I mean, hopefully Jerry Jeudy's not tired this week.
I can't believe I don't know what was more unbelievable with that, Jimmy, that he actually said that, or that Mary Kay Cabot is like, I'm going to give him a pass. Right.
She
just keeps carrying that water. Like he's going to run more this week, Jimmy. He's going to run a couple extra laps after practice, so his endurance will be just fine on Sunday because that's how endurance training works.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's gonna be fine. It's gonna be great. No, but I think you hit on it. I think this is I believe the Browns defense will be able to at least slow down this Washington offense. I don't think the Browns will be able to score enough because I don't trust the offense. But if they only put a couple scoring drives together against this defense, this season is over.
Oh yeah. I mean, if I'm Washington, I'm thinking, how do I get to 20?
Yeah.
And they should be able to. Yeah, because the Browns can't get to 20. They could. I mean, I guess they almost got to 20 last week, but that was with the defensive score.
Yep.
So that's not the offense doing anything. And
Nope.
if they lose this game and the offense doesn't look good, it's time to start talking about putting Watson on the bench. If you have to come up with his shoulder's bothering him, his hips bothering him, he got rolled up on and his knees sore, I don't care. You can't keep throwing him out there at this point if you're going to be 1-4 going into the meat of your schedule. They still have everybody in their division to play. They've still got the Chiefs. They still got the Chargers. Those are going to be tough games down the road. And for this team to even sniff the playoffs, right now you're looking at having to go 9-4 against the hardest part of your schedule. I don't see how that's even possible. And if this team ends up, I think their over-under sits at 5.5 or 6.5. I still think they get to probably 7, maybe. But if they can't get to 7 wins, people got to go. I know they signed everybody to extensions, but it seems like a situation like what you had with, Cliff Kingsbury's going to be on the other sideline on Sunday. And we saw what happened in Arizona. They gave Murray, Kingsbury, and the GM down there big extensions, and it was like, oh shit, we shouldn't have done that. And then they had to fire the coach and the GM. Yep. Are we going to see Haslam be forced by the fans into that situation? Because I don't think he wants to. I don't think he wants to fire these guys after giving them extensions, especially after all these years of paying coaches and GMs to not actually work for the franchise, to have to jump right back in and do that. It's a mess. And this team's cap situation isn't going to get any better moving forward. It's just, they're in a bad spot, man.
Yeah, I think we will very much find out if this season continues to go poorly. I think we will very much find out who it was that really wanted Deshaun Watson.
No, I've always contended it was either D. Podesta or Haslam gave the word and said, no, guarantee it all.
And if it was that, then how the hell can you punish Barry and Stefanski for that decision?
Well, that's never stopped coaches and GMs from getting punished for these types of decisions before.
Well, I guess you're not wrong there.
Let's move on. We've got some teams on the bye this week. The Lions, the Chargers, the Eagles, and the Titans will not be playing football. The teams that are playing football, we will start with the undefeated Minnesota Vikings, just like we all expected, taking on the New York Jets. The Vikings are 3-point home favorites. Oh, sorry, that is now down to 2.5. The over-under sits at 40.5, minus 142 for the Vikes, plus 120 for the Jets. Jimmy, that Jets loss last week was incredibly comical to myself because I have the under on the Jets, and I thought that was going to be a win for them, so I was really happy they lost that game. I'm sure you weren't as pleased with that result as I was.
I was not pleased. It was weird to me. I'm hoping the Jets offense will take a turn this week because I'm taking the Jets and the under here. Everybody's talking about the Darnold revenge game. I think this is the Jets revenge game, showing they know who Darnold is against the premier defense. And I do think the Jets have a very good defense. Hopefully they can figure out something on offense to score some points. So I think the Vikings are going to play on international television, and Sam Darnold is going to turn back into Sam Darnold.
I do think the old Sam Darnold is going to reappear at some point. It is, as I said, Halloween season, so pumpkins are out. We'll see if Darnold turns back into one. I don't think it happens this week. I think that Vikings defense is good. I think the Jets' offensive situation is kind of a mess because they don't really have a good offensive coordinator, and Aaron Rodgers is more concerned with things outside of football than football. I like the Vikings. I think they keep rolling here. I also like the over. I don't think that Jets defense is very good, and I think Minnesota's going to put some points on them.
All right. I like it
Big,
when we get the full disagreement.
yeah, oh yeah. Big game in the AFC North. The Baltimore Ravens are traveling to Cincinnati to take on the Bengals. 2.5-point road favorites are the Ravens. Over-under sits at 49, minus 135 for Baltimore, plus 114 for Cincy. This seems like too easy of a game to take Baltimore, Jimmy. Is it really that easy of a game to take Baltimore?
Not for me.
Really?
Not for me. I'm taking the Bengals money line, and I know it's a huge number, but I think it'll go over as well.
Wow. I'm totally on the opposite side of this one. I think Baltimore should be able to just run all over Cincy. That Bengals defense isn't very good. They can't stop the run. And Baltimore looked like they figured out who they were last week. Like, just stick with Henry, pound it. And I don't know how the Bengals can win this game unless Joe Burrow and the receivers are just great and they're throwing it all over the place, which I think he'll put up a pretty decent day. I just think Baltimore is going to run the ball, control the clock, and that's why I actually like the under on this one.
Yeah, well, it's something, we talk about how good Lamar is against the NFC and teams that don't see him a lot. It's the exact opposite in the AFC North. Their last 18 division games, they're 7-11. Now, the Bengals have also been kind of poor recently in division games, but you've had a lot of Burrow.
They never beat Baltimore either.
You've had a lot of Burrow injuries there, and I think the Ravens were so up for that game last week. I think there's going to be a letdown. I think the Bengals are still desperate. I don't think the Ravens will be able to slow down the Bengals with their full complement of weapons. I think the Bengals are going to do just enough to pull this out by a field goal.
That's fair. I actually need Cincinnati to win this game because I have them to win the division, so that would help me. That Cincinnati defense is bad. Cincinnati can't run the ball. They're very one-dimensional on offense, and I know that one dimension can be really lethal, especially when you get Chase and Higgins going. But I think Baltimore is starting to figure it out, and I think they're going to win this game and take control of the division. Our next game sees the Houston Texans taking on the Buffalo Bills, who the Ravens just blew out. Houston 1-point home favorites. Over-under sits at 47, minus 115 for the Texans, minus 105 for the Bills. Well, we saw Roller Coaster Josh hit his bottom last week. Do we see the high point this week?
Man, I don't know. I'm gonna take the Texans money line in the over here, but I don't know what the Bills are gonna look like. All year it's kind of felt like the Bills have been better without Stephon Diggs. It's been like addition by subtraction. But then last week it was like Josh Allen needs a dude who he can just throw the ball to get going, and Shakir just wasn't that last week. So I don't know what happens in this game, but I know C.J. Stroud has been incredible at home in his career. He's 9-2, great numbers. I think this is pretty close to a 50-50 game with how the two teams have been playing, so I'm going to take the home dog.
No, they're favored by a point.
Are they favored?
Yeah, Houston's favored. They're not a dog.
Wow, when I saw it was Texans plus 1.5.
Yeah, it's Texans minus 1.
Wow,
Yeah.
A lot of movement in a day.
Yeah, I do like the over at 47, and my first thought on this was I like the Bills to bounce back. Houston still hasn't looked quite right. But I was just thinking about that drive last week. Stroud just put him right down the field, and you knew they were going to score and win that game. And that's the type of thing the big-time QBs do.
Yep.
I think this is a 50-50 game, like you said, and I like C.J. Stroud in the big moment better than I do Josh Allen. So I'm going to take Houston as well.
Yeah, I think this is a game, it's going to be a good game to watch to see how the Bills bounce back from that loss, because that was an outright whooping.
Oh yeah.
And how will they come back from that? Like it's going to be. It's really one of the marquee games of the week for sure.
Oh, definitely. And Houston has something to prove. Can they beat the big boys in the AFC after getting blown out in the playoffs by Baltimore? You don't want to turn around and lose to Buffalo.
Yep.
Our next game sees the Chicago Bears as 4-point home favorites over the Carolina Panthers. Over-under on this one is 40.5, minus 192 for the Bears, plus 160 for the Panthers. The Panthers, they got their win, and now they go back to losing, Jimmy. Andy Dalton, turned back into Andy Dalton after being awesome for a week. He seems to do that whenever he comes in for somebody. He plays well for a week and then turns back into Andy Dalton. I think that Chicago defense should be able to totally shut down the Panthers, and I don't think that Carolina defense is good enough to exploit the problems the Bears have on the O-line. So I like the Bears here to win. I like them to cover that 4, even though it does kind of scare me because that offense is still a little iffy.
Yeah, no, I think the Bears will win, but I'm going to take the Panthers to cover. It's Andy Dalton doing what he does, losing close games.
Our next game sees the winless Jacksonville Jaguars as 3-point home favorites over the against the Indianapolis Colts. Over-under is 46, minus 162 for the Jags, plus 136 for the Colts. I was ready to just get excited about the Joe Flacco parlay, but it looks like Anthony Richardson may be starting this game.
I think that's probably bad for the Colts. Even when I picked, I thought Flacco would be playing. And I was absolutely on the Jags, and I'm still on the Jags. The Colts can't win in Jacksonville. They haven't won in Jacksonville in a very long time. Jonathan Taylor's questionable the last I saw. So I think the Jags get a win here.
I can't give. I'm getting 3 points against Jacksonville. I'm going to take them because I think Jacksonville's a mess. I think we're just waiting for Doug Peterson to get fired and replaced by Bill Belichick. And the Jaguars should probably move quickly because Philadelphia may be moving to get Bill Belichick in as their quarterback as well.
Yeah. So that was something I wanted to bring up. So after this Colts game, Jacksonville goes to Europe for 2 games. If they do lose this game to the Colts, do you make that move before making the trip, or do you wait till after? What do you think?
It'd be really difficult to go to London and have, I don't know when their bye week is. That's generally the best time to do this. But, I mean, at this point, they're 0-4. The season's over. So, I don't know. This team does seem to get better when they play in Europe. So, maybe you give them the opportunity to go there and get their shit together, come back. Maybe you're 2-5 or 3-4 at worst or at best. I don't see how Jacksonville has any good options. Their offensive talent's just okay. Like, there's nobody special there. I think Trevor Lawrence can be a good quarterback, but I don't think Doug Peterson knows what to do unless what Doug Peterson needs to do is take over play calling. Because I don't know why he hasn't broken that glass in case of emergency, because they're in an emergency. If you can't beat this Indianapolis team, you go down to they'd be 0-5. Man. Yeah,
because in my mind, I'm like, the Colts have not won in Jacksonville since like 2014.
Jacksonville
if you lose this game and go to 0-5, I'm like, you got to fire Peterson. I'm like, logistically, do you really want to do that before the rigmarole of going to London? So Doug Peterson might be able to get to 0-7 and still have a job. I don't know.
That would be insane. I mean, this Jacksonville team was 8-3 and looking like they were going to contend for the 1 seed last year, and then Trevor has his ankle injury and a few other nicks. They had a few other guys get injured, and I believe they're like 1-11 since then.
Yeah,
it's just wild. Oh, Jimmy, the Miami Dolphins and New England Patriots are going to play a football game. I don't want to watch any of this game, but the Dolphins are 1-point road favorites. 35.5 is the over-under. Minus 108 for the Patriots. Minus 112 for the Dolphins. I don't know. Miami because they're better, I guess.
No, I got beef. With Huntley. He let me down big time last week. Made a fool out of me, so I'm going to take the Patriots and the under.
Definitely take the under. I wouldn't bet on either one of these teams to win or on the money line, but definitely I like the under. Our next game sees the San Francisco 49ers hosting the Arizona Cardinals. Niners, 7.5-point favorites. Over-under sits at 50. Minus 355 for San Francisco, plus 280 for Arizona. I keep hearing people make excuses for Kyler Murray, Jimmy, and I don't understand why.
Because they all want to be right about him.
But what was it Nick Wright said? He's like, he's awesome 1 week, and then he'll be bad for 2 weeks. And it's like, yeah, that's the Kyler Murray experience.
Yeah, like it's what it is. It's now, so the 49ers average like 35 points a game versus the Cardinals over the last 2 years.
Yeah, it's because the Cardinals defense stinks.
But the 49ers and Kyle Shanahan also don't care about our gambling. Like, they got very disinterested last week, and Kyler loves to be the scrappy guy fighting back. So I think the Cardinals will cover, but early in the game, the 49ers are just going to dominate. And then I think the Cardinals will fight their way back and cover this spread.
I think San Francisco is going to put up more than 30, and I don't see how the Cardinals can get past 24. So give me the Niners, lay the points. I like the over.
Yeah, definitely the over.
This is one of those games where San Francisco should be able to scheme something up to confuse Kyler Murray because they see him so frequently.
Yeah.
And like Marvin Harrison looks good, but last week they get that first drive and then they don't do a damn thing after that.
Yeah, I don't think you have to do a whole lot of scheming to bother Kyler. I think
and Arizona, I said it last week, they better get going because we're going to see a new COD release here in the next month or two.
Yep.
Our next game sees the Denver Broncos hosting the Las Vegas Raiders.
What?
The Broncos are 3-point favorites. 35.5 is the over-under. Minus 155 for Denver. Plus 130 for Vegas. Denver scrapped out that win last week. They're dinking and dunking their way to victories with Bo Nix. I guess Denver's going to win this game because Vegas they're just not very good. And I don't think they're good enough to string wins together.
Yeah, I guess I'll go the other way and take the Raiders. I want no part of this game. I don't know.
Yeah.
I think Denver is, I think, a legit top 5 defense in the league, but the Raiders, maybe Brock Bowers busts something. Maybe Devontae goes out and shows out for whoever he's going to play next.
No, I don't think he's going to see the field.
You don't think he plays? Oh.
I don't know. It just seems like they want to trade him. He wants to be traded. We're just waiting for a team. The closer we get to the deadline, the more desperate a team will get. I totally agree about the under. If you want to tease this under with the Miami New England under, I think that's the start of a good tease. That's the start of a good part. That's the start of a good parlay.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Probably put that with Chicago, Carolina under.
Yeah.
Our next game sees the New York Giants traveling to the West Coast to take on the Seattle Seahawks. Seattle 7-point favorites. 42.5 is the over-under. Minus 325 for the Hawks. Plus 260 for the Giants. How do you think Daniel Jones is going to do against that Seattle defense on the road?
Dude, this line just keeps moving, dude. It opened at 5.5, and now it's up to 7.
Yeah.
If
this line was 13.5, I would like Seattle. I'm expecting a methodical ass beating. That's what I'm expecting.
I'm not, we're not real big, we're not real big on, a loss can be a good thing. But I think Seattle learned a lot about their team last week in that game with Detroit. The Giants aren't the Lions. I think the Seahawks are going to just roll in this game. No problem.
Yeah, I really like Seattle this week. Up next, the Green Bay Packers traveling to Los Angeles to take on the Rams. They're 3-point road favorites. Over-under sits at 49. Minus 162 for the Pack. Plus 136 for the Rams. I just think the Rams are too injured, and Green Bay is supposed to be too good. But Jordan Love, no wins this year. That has to change this week, right?
Yeah, I think the Packers will win. For our pod, I'm going to take the Packers. This is a stay away from me because I feel like this is a field goal game.
Yeah, it seems like best case scenario. If you bet on Green Bay, is you're getting a push.
Yeah, that's just how I kind of feel. The Rams are so banged up, but they're competing in games banged up, and I'm not sure The Packers, I would imagine, after last week, are going to try to run the ball a little bit more, so Jordan Love doesn't have to do his best Brett Favre impersonation.
Well, you'd think they would want to run the ball. They did pay a bunch of money for Josh Jacobs.
Yeah, this is very true. So I'm going to take the Packers, but I feel like this is a push, but it should still be a good game. But I think the Packers win by a field goal.
Our next game sees the Pittsburgh Steelers hosting the Dallas Cowboys. Steelers are now 3-point favorites. That's a half point towards them. 44 is the over-under, minus 148 for the Steelers, plus 124 for Dallas. Everything is looking like Pittsburgh should win this game and that Dallas is going to just have to take a week of people talking about what a mess they are, which is why I actually think Dallas is going to win this game. I think this is the moment where Pittsburgh drops a game they shouldn't, and everybody's like, oh, man, we thought Pittsburgh was good, and it's like, maybe not.
Well, I mean, don't you kind of feel like that's what happened last week?
Yeah, and I think it's going to happen again this week.
Really? I see. That's where I'm like, I'm struggling because I'm like, man, is that defense really going to play bad 2 weeks in a row? What's Justin Fields going to look like? I feel like this game may come down to a coaching decision, and I'm going to go ahead and take Tomlin over McCarthy. So I'm going to take the Steelers.
That's a very good point and very fair. I think Dak's going to have to throw a ton. I don't think the Steelers are going to let Dallas run the ball, and they're not very good running the ball anyway.
Yeah, this is true.
Our last game of the week on Monday night, the Kansas City Chiefs hosting the New Orleans Saints. I almost called them the New Orleans Pumpkins. The Chiefs are 5.5-point favorites. Over-under sits at 43.5, minus 265 for the Chiefs, plus 215 for the Saints. The Saints, I think they're turning back into who we thought they were. But on the other hand, this KC team doesn't seem capable of blowouts in the regular season. They're kind of doing that, treating the regular season like practice thing. But they do seem to be getting a lot of covers this year because they're winning games by touchdowns.
Yep.
That defense is legit. I think they shut down Derek Carr, and Kamara looks like he may already be starting to get dinged up. And if that's the case, I don't know how New Orleans is going to move the ball.
Yeah, it's back-to-back road games for the Saints going into Arrowhead. 5.5 is just kind of a weird number. Like a lot of the lines,
the Vegas zone.
Yeah, like just weird. But yeah, I think they win by a touchdown, and I think Andy Reid. I feel like Andy Reid is gonna like this spot this week, where he's like, oh, okay, look at all these players are out. I'm gonna make you a star this week. Like, I just feel like the offensive scheme will get going, and I think the Chiefs will win this one pretty easily.
Yeah, they're finding ways to use Kareem Hunt in ways that the Cleveland Browns couldn't.
No, he's a goal line back. Don't you know?
That's all he can do. That's all he can do. Oh, he can actually do a little more than that. I'm not saying he's great, but it's just another example of the Browns giving up on somebody or not wanting somebody, and then another team gets them and does something with them and gets the most out of them. But it doesn't happen here in Cleveland, even though this coaching staff is supposed to be awesome. It's just very frustrating to see that continually happen, especially on the offensive side of the ball, where they could really use some help at running back.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with everything. Yeah, it's frustrating because I'm going to get going and not be able to stop.
Yeah. So
it didn't make sense.
We talked a little bit about some parlays we like. Who are you looking to put into parlays this week?
I'm probably looking. I think I'm going to hammer a lot of overs and unders this week because there are a lot of games where I feel like absolute overs and absolute unders, but I probably am focusing on 49ers, Seahawks. For me, I also like the Bengals and the Chiefs. Those are probably where a lot of my parlays are going to build from.
Yeah, I think that Chiefs minus 265 money line is a really good starting point for a lot of teases or a lot of parlays because I think the Chiefs definitely win that game, and getting them at minus 265 at home against a pretty mediocre Saints team feels like easy money. So maybe it's going to not be, but I like them there, and the Seahawks at minus 325. Those are two teams I think are going to win.
Yeah,
probably cover, but being able to start your parlay building with a minus 325 and a minus 265 that feel like they should be closer to minus 400, minus 500. I like that.
That's how I thought too. And then for me, I just have a feeling about the Bengals, but not a lot of weeks where you're going to get any points with the Bills. You know?
Yeah.
So
and if you think the Bills are going to bounce back, Houston hasn't really beaten a top-level AFC team yet. So it wouldn't surprise me if Buffalo keeps that game close and ends up winning it.
Yeah. So that's a good spot. I think that's a good spot for you too. You know, if you have that feeling about the Bills, or because there's a couple pick-ems but I think that's a really if you like the Bills, going like Chiefs, Seahawks, Bills, and then maybe you get in on the Colts Jags game. I think there's good value there.
Yeah, get your and then add your boost in, and you're probably in the plus 750 to 900 range, and you're getting like you said, you're getting good value for your money there.
Yep. Any
players you expect to shine for our fantasy players out there?
Oh man, Browns fans, don't listen all the pass catchers for the Armada. I think DK Metcalf will have another good game. He kind of unlocked a little bit. Looked well. That's probably where a lot of my focus will be there. And then the Bengals wide receivers as well.
Yeah, the Bengals wide receivers are going to have to do something in this game because Cincinnati's not going to be able to run the ball against Baltimore.
No.
And I also feel the same way about the Dallas game. Even if Dallas doesn't win that game, they're going to have to throw a ton. So I think especially in PPR leagues and things like that, the Dallas pass catchers, especially, CeeDee Lamb, you're going to start anyway, but maybe some of those other guys end up catching 6 to 8 balls.
Yeah, and if you agree with Evan that the Vikings are going to keep rolling, then the Vikings, then you'd want to focus on Justin Jefferson and Aaron Jones.
Yeah. Well, it's week 5.
Man.
Everybody was talking draft after the Browns lost to Vegas, so we're already into that mode with the Browns, which is great. 3 years into the Deshaun Watson experience, and this team's a complete mess.
Yeah.
We're not a mess though, Jimmy. We're doing just fine here on the pod.
We're doing just fine. I'd be doing a little bit better if the Buccaneers had got a win on Thursday. But we're doing all right.
So that's week 5. We'll be back next week for week 6. Jimmy, thanks for joining me to break all this down.
No place I'd rather be, brother.
And we would like to thank all of you for listening. For Jimmy Champ, I'm Evan Belfiore. Thank you for listening to No Broken Legs.